Okay, in today's video we're going to look at the loop recording feature on the Panasonic GH6. So loop recording is not a new feature to this camera. It was actually available on the GH5 and it should still be available in cameras like the GH5S and the GH5 Mark II. So if you've got any of those cameras you should be able to follow along exactly the same, but for demonstration purposes we'll be doing it on the GH6. So it's sort of worth noting before we kind of get into this that this is a movie mode feature. So if you want to follow along, then you'll need to be in the movie mode option. So on the top of the camera you can switch into that, or if you've got a C menu that is set up under that mode, then you'll be able to kind of follow along with it. But just to kind of give a bit of a preface on what it does, it's essentially allows the camera to continue shooting almost infinitely, as long as the battery can keep the camera on. So the way it does that is by just continually recording, and then when the card gets full it will then go back and start deleting the oldest footage from the card. So it's just going in a continuous loop, sort of hence the name. It's something, it might be useful for, it's essentially the kind of thing that a dash cam would do, but you're unlikely to use your GH6 for that kind of purpose. But to give a bit of context on something it might be useful for, if you're shooting something that's a bit unpredictable, say you're shooting something like a natural event like lightning or something like that, it's quite possible that you will leave the camera running for extended periods of time, because if you just try and record it when you see it, obviously you hit the record button, it's gone, you've just completely missed it. So it's one of those things where you will need to hit record before it happens, and you may just want to leave it running until there's a really good bit of footage, and then stop the camera once you've got that bit of footage, and then you can kind of take it all off, and you don't then have to worry about the card's full up. And the same if you were to do something like like you see on social media, people doing like trick shots and things like that. It's going to take maybe hundreds of takes to capture that one time where it actually happens. And again, it just means you can leave the camera hands-free, and you're not going to have to worry about changing the card, or the card gets full and you have to format it. It's like you can just leave it running until you've got your shot, and then that's it. You can sort of get the card out and get your footage. So if you're thinking about using this feature, the first thing you'll probably want to do is take a backup of whatever's on the card, because if you've got like an old project, or say you've got some family shots on there or something like that, those files are obviously at risk of being deleted by the camera. So before you start, just make sure you're not worried about the old footage being deleted, or you've got like a new card or something. So just definitely do that, because just be aware that you could lose files doing this. Another thing to bear in mind is that this doesn't work for variable frame rate, or VFR. If you're not sure what that is, I'll link in the top right to how you can set that up and how you can use it, but it doesn't work for that. So if you've got VFR enabled, the option will just be blanked out. And also it won't be available if I'll show you these things actually as we're going. So the option itself is under the video camera, and then right at the bottom it's the others video menu. So it's the second video camera with the 3 dots underneath, and then under here, look, we've got loop recording. So by default it will be off, and we can switch that on. But if I go into my Q menu, I've sort of customized this so it might look a little bit different to yours. I'll link up in the top right how to kind of customize this menu and what it is, but essentially just hit the Q for me, and I've got the option for VFR in here. So if I go into VFR and I turn that on and set that, and then if I come back, you can see I can't use it anymore because variable frame rate's on. So I'll turn that off again. If I just come out of there, switch that off. So that's the first thing to bear in mind. If it's greyed out, it might be that you're using VFR, so it's not possible. The next thing, if we go into the video mode, We've also got, so if we come into the video camera and then the third one down, we're not doing anything special here, just looking at the recording format. So if we're in MP4, which is tends to be our kind of 8-bit video formats, then if we come down into, back into there, into our loop recording, you can see now it doesn't work because we're in the MP4 mode. So the only ones it's actually available in is you can use it in MOV or MOV format or in Apple ProRes. So if you've got either of those enabled, it then will become available again. You'll kind of see it's there again now. And then just to make it even more confusing, some of these modes, MOV or MOV and ProRes, they're quite intensive kind of shooting modes. The other thing you'll find, if the record quality, so third one down here, if your record quality, you can see here the megabits per second, it's just above the VFR options. If that goes above 400, so you can see here this All-I HD one is 800. If it goes above 400, if we come back into loop recording, you'll be able to see we can't do it because it's above 400 megabits a second, and that's just a limitation of it, because essentially what's happening is if we go to one of these ones, let's say 200, that will be fine. Yeah, essentially what's happening, because the camera is having to delete and write files at the same time, some of those really high frame rates are just not high frame rates, sorry, some of those bigger files are just disabled for that. So you just need to make sure you're in either MOV or ProRes and you're shooting under 400 megabits a second, and then this mode will be kind of available. So the next thing is to have a memory card that's fast enough to actually write the files and delete them at the same time. So to do that, you need a writing speed on the card that is the equivalent to double the bit rate of the footage. So if the card's not fast enough, then the camera can stop recording. If you plan on using the higher quality settings in this mode, then you'll want a card that can shoot over 800 megabits per second. And like I say, the maximum bitrate is 400, so 800 you would be, give or take, the kind of maximum. So this is where it gets a little bit confusing, because your memory cards will just have usually a read and write speed per second. So 800 megabits a second translates to around 100 megabytes a second. Most new SD cards can write over 100 megabytes a second, but you'll just need to kind of make sure on those cards that they can actually do it, and that's a write speed, not a read speed, so just check that. My kind of preference with this is, what I would do is just take out the SD card, and you'll see on my one I've got a SanDisk Extreme Pro, but this card is getting a little bit old now. It's an oldish card, it's a decent card, but you can see on there 95 megabytes a second is what it's rated at. So if I try to use some of the higher modes, that would be at the limits of it, and it may just stop recording. So I'm not going to want to risk that. Like I say, a new if you bought a new SanDisk Extreme card now, I'll link a few in the description that are good enough to do it, but if you were to use a modern version of that Extreme Pro card, you'd probably be absolutely fine. But it's just a case of I don't really like to risk it with those cards, because they're kind of on the verge of being able to do it. But whereas the CF Express card in there, you've got huge read and write speeds. The write speed on this is 1600 megabytes a second, so there's not going to be any problems using that. So that's kind of my preference, just to shoot with the CF Express card in there if I'm doing this. And the main reason I just take the card out is because regardless of how you've got the double slot function set up, the camera essentially once it goes into loop recording, so once the card is full, it's actually just going to switch out of that mode. So if you don't know what I'm talking about there with the sort of recording types or double slot function, I'll link to a video above about it, but essentially you've got different types of recording. So you've got relay recording that would switch from CF Express to SD card, or you've got backup recording, so it could send it out to both cards at the same time. But yeah, once you hit record, you'll be in that mode up until the card is full, and then once the card starts rewriting itself, it will just switch into doing loop recording just on that one single card. So sort of don't expect there to be a backup or a relay happening whilst this function's in place. So with all of that aside, let's kind of go into what it actually looks like on there. So if we jump into, again, the video camera, and then the video camera, there's 3 dots underneath it, and then we've met all the criteria of loop recording, so it's there available as an option, and the options are literally on and off. You can set other things around it, like I say, but this feature itself is just on and off. And then once we're out of the menu, you'll be able to see just up there we've got the 2 arrows, which sort of signifies that we're on loop recording. And what you'll find is you've got the countdown timer for it's not really a countdown timer, but the remaining video left down at the bottom of the camera. And what would happen is once the card is kind of full, it would go back to right over the top of the old files, and that kind of then disappears, because then it becomes it sort of goes into the loop recording mode, and there no longer is any kind of time remaining, because it's just on an infinite loop, like I say, until the battery will kind of run out. So when that time code does disappear, like I say, that's when loop recording's begun, and it's also when that files now are actually being overwritten and being deleted from the card. I think if you plan to use this feature, it's probably wise to have some kind of power going into the camera, because otherwise you're limited by the battery. So I would probably either recommend using mains power. I'll link above to sort of how you can use mains power with the GH6. Or if you don't have access to mains power, potentially think about using a power bank to keep the battery topped up whilst you're shooting. Again, I'll link to a video on how you can use a power bank and what power banks are compatible. But yeah, it's probably worth doing that, if you're going to do it, because one of my small kind of gripes with the GH6 is the battery life. It's not quite as good as I'd like it to be from a stock battery, but yeah, you've got all those additional features anyway that can help that. So really, just as a kind of final word of warning, if you followed this tutorial, obviously you've probably just switched loop recording on. So when the camera's switched off and you switch it back on again, loop recording's still going to be there. So you'll need to go back in and then physically switch it off. And like I say, you'll know if you've got it on because you've got this icon up here next to my thumb. And then when we switch it off, that icon's gone, so it shows that we're out of the loop recording mode. And like I say, if you're shooting and you don't realise that it's switched on, you're risking losing video on the card. So if you're doing client work, or you've got like kind of shots on there you really don't want to lose, just be sure just to double check that if you ever use this mode, and just make sure, and then you're kind of preventing any future loss of files or disasters. So yeah, hopefully this video's helped. If it has, give it a like. If you want to find out more about the GH6, there's a playlist on this channel with lots of other videos, and if you want to kind of see more, then please subscribe.